Good morning, this is Mayayo speaking from Guadarrama National Park up in the mountains of central Spain, enjoying the last snow of the spring, and we are to introduce you to the three workhorses of the Brooks Trail Running 18 range. Now remember, the range in Brooks Trail Running encompasses up to 6 zoos, which are basically these three, which are Caldera 2, Pure Grid 7 for what they call natural running versus the long range forest road runner, which is the Caldera, and the all classic Cascadia, this time Cascadia 13 for this year, which is moving into a more protected zoo for rocky trails and a bit more nimble. Now the other three zoos here, as you can see from the official Brooks website, would be the Adrenaline, which is let's say Adrenaline ASR, basically zoo, let's say the version of the street running cushion. It really does not add anything really worth it, so that's why we're not considering. And the Mazama, which is the most agile and nimble zoo, the only one with lugs up to 6 millimeters, but it's not for the, let's say, much of a workhorse as these three. Now, let's start with Cascadia. Cascadia 13 comes with, let's say, as usual in the last years, with minor changes. Basically, most dramatic are all in the upper, with these thermoplastics wrapping up so as to ensure that we've got a better wrap up in the forefoot, midfoot, larger protection from the upside, for the toe box. But still, it's just the very well-known, very reliable. So its numbers for this year, it's 335 grams, which is slightly under 12 ounces. The same classic 10 millimeter drop with a low height to the ground as compared with others. It's basically 17 millimeters and 27 up here. Let's say this 17 would be just about the standard for a Salomon zoo as well, but it's way below what we are getting in cushioning from brands such as Hoka or Ultra, which go all the way up even above 30 in some of their models. Let's say a well-cushioned trail running shoe would be from 23, 24 onwards. A maximalist shoe from 30 onwards, and a down-to-earth shoe would be something below 20, being 17 and 18 the most average. Now the sole is classic as ever, with the 4 pivots that the brand claims that help you in terms of proprioception and aligning your feet, plus the rock protection plate, all with a rubber compound, which let's see if it has improved. It certainly has not been the strong point of the shoe. Remember that US or Japan soles are still a bit behind, generally speaking, versus European soles. So far in our experience, the grippiest soles for wet rock have been those of the Italian Vibram, the Germans at Continental that are soling Adidas, or Salomon, or the Brits are Innovate, or the Italians at La Sportiva, basically. Whereas Brooks, New Balance, Saucony, Mizuno, or Asics are not up to that standard. Now, basically, the Cascadia has evolved to be a companion for, let's say, the mountain, the tricky technical terrain within Brooks trail running, because it's quite well protected all over it, as you see. Now, if you want to run the long trails on a easy-going forest roads, now that's what the Caldera was born for. Comfortable as any other in my case, my first Cascadia was Cascadia 5, with which I shared the 100 miles of Leadville back in 2010, which in fact I was the first Spaniard ever to complete. And I have done several other ultras with the Cascadia, the Brooks Caldera. I have run in the Canary Islands and in the central Spain, and in several ultras up to 80 kilometers, and I have found them as extremely comfortable as delicate in terms of the sole. Now its numbers are basically price around 140. All the range is between 120 and 150, so it's very consistent range. It's a light shoe, actually, 290. It may seem a bit bulky, but it's a light shoe, nimble. And drop is 4 millimeters, which also helps with your proprioception when you go into tricky terrain. It's nice. The closer you stay, your heel stays to the ground, the more balanced you get, if your technique is adequate, of course. And the height is 21 millimeters and 25, which is, as I said, middle of the pack, which together with the width of the sole, you will notice that it's an extra wide sole. It's got in numbers 11.5 up here and 8.5 at the back, versus its sister, which is just 11 centimeters up here. Therefore, it provides, for added stability up front and added, of course, cushioning. The wider your sole, the more surface you've got where to, splash when you hit. Now, third is the different shoe. Now, with the Pure Grit, basically what Brooks tried to create is a shoe that helps us go back to natural running feelings. Not much of a structure. Very, very flexible shoe, as you will note. The most flexible of the range, and relatively wide in terms of the sole. Basically, just about as wide as the Caldera up front, and slightly, ever so slightly, like 2-3 millimeters at the heel, which, as I mentioned before, provides for added stability. And in terms of the weight, it's also a light shoe. It's not as light as Masama, that goes down to 160 grams, but in the terms of the Pure Grit, we are just about there. It's 275 grams, which is light, definitely light for a trail running shoe. The drop is at 4 millimeters, which is the biomechanically optimum, the one we would use for a racing flat shoe. Remember, the zero drop is good for technique, but not necessarily top quality in terms of performance, because humans tend to make a bit more of a slight 4 millimeter incline. Now, the cushioning is 17 up front, 21 at the back, which means we've got the same cushioning here that at the Cascadia, and but with a wider sole, therefore a bit more of cushioning if you are heavy. So if you're a heavyweight, remember the Cascadia 13 will give you the least out of these three cushioning. Both Caldera and Pure Grit will give you better cushioning if you want to go on easy trails and forest roads. If you want to go into technical terrain, Cascadia is designed to give you more of a protection. For heavyweights, let's consider the Adrenaline ASR, or directly the Adrenaline GTS, because there's not a major difference. And for those of you who want to go fast as possible, do consider the Masama that you can find in another video. But in terms of selling, these are the three definitely top sellers from Brooks. Nicely thought out range. And in my opinion, a suggestion would be that they would consider at least testing in one of their zoos European soles with Vibram, with Continental, with Michelin, which is Michelin is working with Saleva, for example. Continental is working with Adidas, and Vibram works with just about any major maker. Vibram did a wonderful job with the New Balance. So, well, in any case, I will be running again with them. I do have a soft spot these days for the Caldera. As I said, it's cushy and comfortable as any. But I do believe also that Cascadia and Pure Grit will have its public. Now we will put them to the test and share with you the results as usual at trailrunningspain.com in English and carrerasdemontana.com in Spanish. Were you interested in anything else on this? Just Google up trail running Mayayo with twice the Y, Mayayo, Miyayo, and well, you'll find more about Brooks and the test we're running on. Well, see you out on the trails. Bye.